Radiating from the heart of America and stretching from coast to coast and border to border, welcome to On Radio, the wireless industry's weekly download coming straight from the builders and newsmakers of everything wireless. Your host is Jim Tracy, and this is On Radio.
Folks, welcome back to On Radio. This week, we get to say welcome back also to Sam McGuire. And remember, he is chair of the NATE UAS committee. Sam, the other thing that really comes into play when you talk about rolling a UAV or any type of inspection device without any support is there actually does have to be support. Because if you look at the cost of an unrecovered drone, or if you look at the cost that we face for doing all of the kind of things, I mean, even the military doesn't let anything go really truly unaccompanied,
right?
And so the narrative of these drone disasters is always bigger than anything that's ever happened, which is kind of so funny. Well, everybody plays what if. Well, what if the drone drops a thermonuclear device?
Right.
Well,
right.
Gee, it'd probably be bad, but it's never going to happen.
What we've been excited about too is that even at this, 85,000 flights in a year is nothing to sneeze at, and with no recorded true incidents, that's statistically significant. So I think what maybe was scaring people early on, we had this new approach to data collection. It's a flying robot. You just don't know a ton about it. And it was a little bit more Wild West when you didn't know who was operating or what their background was. But we're proving out that it's obviously very safe, and it continues to enhance the safety of the guys who come on tower after it.
Well, and fear is a great motivator. But if you look at the actual history of the industry, there's two problems. Number one, nobody realizes that nothing bad has ever happened. But number two, we've been in an industry as far as UAS that has, generally speaking, done a really good job of over-promising and under-delivering, because they underestimated data collection, because they underestimated the actual cost of rolling a truck out to the site. And they said, hey, I can get a Honda Civic up on top of a mountain and that won't cost me very much gas. And all the folks at the investment level said, well, that return on investment, you ought to be able to do that for, $4. And that's not economics of scale. So, but as we go forward, there are hardware or flight platforms and there's software. And in case of our favorite, Chinese drone manufacturer, their hardware was always pretty far ahead, and their software kept catching up. Is that your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I think typically, if you were to break this out into two, you've got hardware was led by one major player for a long time, and we're seeing pretty significant drops in market share there as more competition comes in. Software's kind of been operating in its own lane, concurrent. And I think what we're starting to find is that there's some really significant competencies on both sides now. So now that our DJI has some folks to fight off, the software side has been propelled by massive data collection efforts over the last few years.
Right.
And so I think if you're out in the market looking for these types of solutions right now, you've got a much more compelling menu than you might have a few years ago. And in the tower space specifically, you got folks that are really figuring out what it is we're trying to get solved.
Yeah. And on the software side of things, one of the things that we have seen over the years is the requirement for processing capacity is dropping down because we understand the need more. So it doesn't take, 15 hours of supercomputer processing time to actually make this digital twin anymore, does it?
No, it still, it's a sophisticated algorithm that gets you a good output. But people, to your point, as with anything, the efficiency gains over time are becoming much more tangible. So it's taking fewer photos per site to get out to a good model that you can use for commercial outputs, right? And with that, you started years ago, looking at many day turnaround times from data transfer into the receipt, a digital twin 3D model. You can get a lot of companies with the right capacity on the compute side can get you same day, 7 to 10 hour turnaround with something that is enabling decisions next day instead of next week.
But it's not happening off of hotel Wi-Fi.
No, I mean, that's honestly, when you think about the constraints out there, everybody who's been in our space and rolled trucks out in the traditional format knows what that's like. Life on the road is not glamorous, and the Wi-Fi is even less so. And when you're coming off of a site, and let's just say a digital twin flight, you could be looking at 10 plus gigs of data. That's a week of consistent upload at rural New Mexico, Holiday Inn, right?
It's always the fault of Holiday Inn Express, right?
Yeah, their coffee's all right, but their Wi-Fi is not.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm involved in and helping with is trying to, and I'm going to try and put this as well as possible. As a pilot, I have to be a little careful, but I'm trying to keep the FAA out of the way, and in order to do that, we have to give them really good factual data, because they don't understand conjecture of any kind. They understand redundancy, and there's not a tremendous amount of redundancy. But again, we have no accidents, so it's not that relevant.
Right.
As you look at keeping the government out of the way and the Part 107, it's in terms of, and I have a Part 107, so I'm not like throwing them under the bus. If you look at the bar for an operator, is it too low?
Oh, that's such a great question. We talked a little bit about this in the last committee call, and you and I have talked about it offline before too, but I think there is, and I'm also not a big believer in layering on a bunch of different standards and certifications that might block the propagation of the workflow. That said, I do think there are some really easy ways for us to train pilots to get out and very competently fly a tower. You have a relatively finite number of structure types, right? And variances. And to get really actionable commercial data, there's only a few ways to go out and do that. So I think one of the things we're looking at right now within the UAS committee is we have a standards and best practices task team that's going to help kind of remove those stumbling blocks. So if you're part of NATE and you haven't even picked up a drone yet, can we create the kind of content, video series that helps you go from not knowing even what kind of airframe you're going to source all the way to potentially, really honestly, flying for a digital twin flight? Because there are things to know and there are chapters to have checked off in your training, but it's not a wildly significant lift from day one to end result.
Yeah. So just like Microsoft Flight Simulator, you cannot go from Microsoft Flight Simulator and jump in a Eclipse 500 jet and fly it. It's not going to happen.
Right.
But in the tower business, most everything that we learn, after we learn how to hook off, most everything that we actually learn and assimilate into day-to-day operations is learned by doing, and it's by people who are mentoring you to choose and pick the right thing every time. When we do that with drones or UASs, we have to have training efficacy that lasts. And you can't do that from a rocking chair. You got to do it on site. Because if you've never had RF interference and you never knew what that drone was going to act like when you encountered it, you're going to find out soon. And if you've never had like cold weather batteries saying, you know what, I decided I'm not at 17%, I'm at 4%. And you're 200 feet off the ground, it's like, this is going to be a bad day unless I do something right now.
No doubt about it. Yeah, and I think to your point, there's fringe cases for operations like RFI and what it could do to your flight. Definitely a threat. Does it happen every time you're on a site? Certainly not. So being able to train for that, have guys equipped and aware that it could be, especially, basic stuff like you show up at a site and you're able to look at it and think to yourself, all right, well, that is not going to be a problem today. Versus getting to a site that may be more broadcast heavy that is going to potentially smoke your drone. So I think user awareness of what they're arriving at is a big thing. But just same with safety on tower is repetition is key. Yeah, no doubt about it.
And the more the experienced person, the more they're capable of mentoring the new person who says, "Hey, what do I do with this?" Well, I can tell you from a practical perspective, I can fly jets, but when I get my thumbs moving in opposite directions, I mean, I
Yeah.
really struggle unless you stay current. And so the currency requirement of flying shouldn't be any different than the currency requirement for drone operations.
Yeah. And I think when you think about those two side by side, it's a hell of a lot easier to keep your drone hours up than it is to hop in a jet, right? So there's
Well, a lot cheaper too.
for sure. I mean, you could do it. You could do it in your backyard if you really needed to.
Yeah.
To your point on your thumbs on the sticks, the other thing that I think is exciting about it too is that as we start thinking through the workforce development side of telecom, which has been a struggle for everybody in perpetuity, we have this really awesome new recruiting tool, right? You have a flying robot who operates with largely the same controls that you had behind your Xbox or your PlayStation or whatever it might be for years and years. So I think it is a really awesome opportunity for us to engage the younger demographic and have the tower space become a little bit of a hybrid role versus what we might have thought in the past.
And we're cooler.
It's cool, man. There's no doubt about that.
Plus, we also give an opportunity. So we've got some folks who've been climbing for us for 20 years, and I don't, a lot of them are in incredible shape, and they're going to be climbing for another 20. But some of them, their bodies begin to age and break down a little bit, and they need another version of their expertise to be filled in, so we can actually age into using opposable thumbs. And
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
when we train, we win. So
yeah, and I think when you think about the space, and I saw this from when I got recruited into the space, it was for a subcontractor. We had 10 guys in our recruiting class, and within 2 months there were like 4 people, right? So talent flight's a big and expensive problem. And if you look at your reference to somebody who's got maybe 2 decades of knowledge up in their head, why would you ever give them the opportunity to, right? When they can become, rather than field-based and it beats your body up, it's like transfer that knowledge over into the back office where your field-based stuff gets physically maybe less demanding, but you also have a transition into a digital ecosystem where you could apply your understanding of a structure and network configurations and everything else into something that can be done from a desktop for the first time.
And when you're looking at a big screen and you spot a problem, you are all of a sudden priceless. That skill set is literally priceless.
No doubt. And I think
well,
you talked a little bit ago about the concept of over-promising and under-delivering. And I think one of the blockers in our space to date has been that the solutions that have been driven out are by teams that are really awesome at software, but don't necessarily know what to be looking for within that model. Like, what is something that would jump out to a tower guy?
Yeah.
Right? Because until that stuff starts to happen, and eventually it'll be automated, but today it's not. Until that is the case, you do need expert eyeballs on this. And this, just like using the drone out in the field, using the data in the back office is its own version of a tool set that we have to learn how to use.
And you can really age into both of them. I mean, I've met a lot of old guys who are pretty good on computers.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, honestly, the knowledge generation, having the understanding of what you're looking for is way harder to create.
It takes a lot longer to learn
than pointing somebody at a platform and teaching them which mouse clicks they need, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Sam, what do you see going forward? If you look at what's your top 2 things that you want to accomplish at the NATE UAS committee, or that you see in the business, of flying tower inspections?
Yeah. So I feel, every day I kind of pinch myself because I fell into telecom. I got into telecom because I was a rock climber, and they told me my brother needed to have somebody who could work with him that wasn't afraid of heights. So stumbled in with the tower industry.
I'll get Sam. He'll do anything.
Yeah. He'll go with me. So I kind of fell into the tower space and fell in love with it. And then the drone stuff came very quickly after. Yeah. And so I feel very fortunate to be sitting in a unique position where I've done both sides of this. And I'm a very strong believer that it is going to be the next tool that we see standardized on, because it can be so impactful. And the value to the industry is going to be outsized in a really significant way, especially once people with knowledge of these structures and these networks are behind the data. It's going to be massive. So the big driver for me is helping go out and turn this into a tool that people know how to leverage.
Yeah.
And I think our goal as the committee has evolved is going to be very similar. So we're breaking out into these different task teams within the UAS committee. And it's really going to be largely driven on understanding use cases, understanding capabilities of UAS and data analytics, and more importantly, probably the limitations that might hold us back.
For sure.
But the end goal being, how do you engage the NATE demographic of customers and turn this into something that they want to use and turn into their, a weapon in their arsenal.
Well, you know what? Every time we provide value to them, they recognize it over time. And so time is on our side. And actually the fruits of the labor of this shows a product that's incredibly, incredibly valuable. And I just want to thank you for your commitment to NATE and to the UAS. Folks, if you haven't joined NATE, you should do that now. And for starters, everything wireless is all about drones, because drones are wireless, right? And so I want to thank you for taking the time and come and chat with us about UAS, the future, the past, and a little bit into what's important. So Sam McGuire, thanks for joining us on radio. And hey, let's say, like we do every week, let's see true safety today. This is Jim, and I am out.
Thanks for tuning in today, and join us every week. Tell your people to listen in and subscribe to On Radio, the voice of everything wireless.